Hi, today we're going to talk about overcoming communication problems and specifically for people with complex PTSD and when you're overcoming complex PTSD. And so that's what we're talking about today. This is a huge pain point for people with these recovering and wanting to recover. And this is a place we can get back a lot of time, connection, love, intimacy, empowerment. This is a really potentially powerful place. And so it's so much of our life and our relationships depend upon this. And a lot of times this area is impaired. And so, especially with complex PTSD, so it's one of the things we want to target when we're recovering and if it's an issue for you, because everybody's PTSD and complex PTSD comes out with different things, and we're lacking different skills and we have different pain points. And so, that's what we're going to talk about today and really help you. I think you're really going to like this. I think you're going to feel encouraged, inspired, and really have some good direction to go in. So, I'm Rachel McLeod. I'm a mental health therapist, emotional wellness coach, and a practitioner mentor. And I specialize in helping people do the brain work for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, and also to doing repairing to getting areas of life up and running. And those symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress really can impair our life. And so the brain has a process for creating function and getting those parts of our life up and running again. That process is natural to the brain, and but it gets stopped or blocked and impaired as well. And so really I specialize in helping that brain process get unblocked and moving forward so that the brain then can resolve these areas and restore function and help people go from impaired to high functioning in specific areas of their life. And so and what we're talking about today is that communication. The brain has a specific process for making us great communicators, or and if it can't do that process, then we're going to be impaired communicators. And so, really, let's talk about how that even started, um, how this problem came about, and when so a lot of my clientele are people that have histories of childhood trauma, neglect, or attachment wounding. They just, the parent, for whatever reason, could not create a secure attachment with the child. And so then all of that abuse, neglect, and attachment wounding really has created more survival responses instead of giving that child time to build thriving responses and skills and ways of being. Right. And so a lot of times people get to me when they're older and they're like, I'm coming out of survival mode, but I still have all these symptoms and uh, I don't know what to do over here. It's healthy. Right. And so they have to shift all of that programming over to thrive and to know what to do in a healthy environment. Right. And so a great problem to have, but it is a challenge. And so sometimes what happens is in our generational patterns, we are not passing on healthy communication skills. And so we get these skills loaded up in our subconscious programming by our parents. If our parents did not have healthy communication skills or had toxic or painful or dysfunctional communication skills, we're learning those. And then we are going to carry those forward in our relationships. You're going to see it when kids are little at the park. If you have them, you're going to watch your kids do your dysfunctional things. That's a really great opportunity to say, "Ooh, I'm going to work on that." And you can get your brain to work on that for you and really create a healthier way of being, not just by reading books, but by actually doing the mind body work that aligns your subconscious programming in your body and brings your whole mind body system together to create a healthier way of being. And books can guide you, but your brain actually is the one that has to make this for you. Okay, so, but in these childhood experiences, if communication was painful and traumatizing, lots of us want to avoid having that happen again because our brain is associated communication and trying to and problem solving with trauma, wounding, making things worse. This doesn't work, and so we will avoid it. And so many of us are avoidant, right? Others of us really sense the importance of the communication, and we just feel like if we can just do it, we can just make it work. It'll be worth it in the end, and it would. they're right. But because the brain can't make healthy communication, you try and try and try and try, and that process is not getting better. And so you end up over trying, overdoing, and making a whole mess of things, and people end up getting hurt and wounded, and you're recreating the dynamic of wounding communication. So this is really both, and so a lot of times there's this attachment work. I'm not going to get too deep into it because there are people that do this way better than I do. But in the repairing of all this stuff, I absolutely see these dynamics, and but I also see people going back and forth in disorganized way from being avoidant and anxious. And so I think it's good to learn both, so that especially if you've got complex PTSD or a disorganized attachment style, look it up. It's interesting. And I'm not gonna make a video on that. They will come hunt me down because I'll be like, you missed all this stuff, right? They do a wonderful job at this, but in repairing this is really my work. Is really both of these things in people who have relationships, avoiding the conversation or really going after aggressively trying to resolve it are both love expressions. And so it's really difficult because there's so much love, but there's so much dysfunction because the skill set is not happening. The brain function is not being created to create healthy communication. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. I kind of want to do a nerd dive into those in different live, so you'll see those as they come, but I want to give you an overview. So a lot of times what's happening in childhood is the absence of being past healthy communication skills. So there just aren't any. Maybe we had avoidant parents, there just wasn't any discussion. We just figured out how to get along, how to stay together, and we're good at staying together, but we can't resolve conflict for anything. So we're just going to avoid it. So that's just, you just have the absence of skills. In other situations where the communication strategies were very dysfunctional and hurtful and painful, those are the skills we have. And a lot of us are like, not doing that, but I don't know what else I'm going to do, so I might just do nothing. Right? And that's because that's how brains work. If brains don't know how to do something, you don't get to do it. And so we want to help the brain really be able to do that and bring that all together. Okay, so that is the majority of what I see happening. How these things came together is this is a generational pattern of dysfunction. So, and some of these generational patterns of dysfunction in communication specifically, some of them were completely off, and some of them were just missing a couple of things. So the communication is malfunctioning, but it just needs a couple of tweaks. The brain needs just a little bit of support. Now you're just missing this one little piece right here, and off it's running. People that have no communication skills or highly dysfunctional ones have more work to do to repair that, but it doesn't mean it has to take a long time. But there is work to do. Okay, and so and really there's a process for this. And I talked about this process that my work is really helping the brain get unblocked and moving forward and creating the healing and that we want. And there's a different way of working with the brain to get this process unblocked. I really target a different part of the brain where instead that we don't typically, in traditional therapy, we haven't really targeted. And this part of the brain is the one that says, yes, you can heal, or no, you can't. We're going to go into survival mode. It's the survival system. And so the strategies for getting this process unblocked are for the survival system. We want to get the survival system allowing the whole brain to function and work and heal and do all the awesome things brains do for us. And if it's shifting in survival mode, that process gets shut down and we don't get access to the awesome things our brain could be doing. And there are some of us that have spent a lifetime with our brain going in survival direction and not doing the upper level things. And so we're going to resolve that. And we're going to get that going. So that's a different way of working with the brain. The interventions we're using to work with that part of the brain are different. I teach 3 of these strategies for free in my program, Interventions for Inner World Transformation. I want to invite you to try those and try it out and go. And then you're going to watch. You can use it that if you can find one of those interventions to really unblock your brain, to shift out of survival mode into processing. You're going to watch your brain do all the things I'm going to talk about here, and you're going to watch yourself doing the problems I'm going to talk about here, and you can help and guide your brain out. So I've left the information about that in the links below, so in the description part or on my profile. Okay, so communication is how we connect, is how we build intimacy, but communication has to be safe. The ingredient for healing is safety. The ingredient for intimacy is safety. If you, no matter how much you want intimacy, if you don't have safety, you can't have it. The more safety you have in intimacy and in communication, the more you will have intimacy and communication, healthy communication. Okay, so that's really what we want to build here. And you can see if you grew up in a childhood where communication was not safe, there's parts of you that are running from that communication, that do not want to run to come to the communication table. They've have associated communication and with danger, pain, and awfulness and trauma. And your brain is right in this. We have to really heal this and help your brain go through its process of filling out that communication could be safe, and communication might be safe, and it seems like communication is safe, and communication is safe, right? Any and all of those things, we're winning. We get an upgrade where the doors are open to new experiences, new trials, new experiments that your brain will be doing, and that's how it rewires. And so we want to support your brain to go through that process. So a lot of times also we will be overreactive in our communications, in our conversations, and that's a brain error. Why'd you bring all the reactions here? And the other thing that we'll do is we'll over guard, over protect, over prepare. And so we will come into these conversations with just too much energy. We're coming up here. We've got a bat. We've got an axe. We've got all the ammunition and the weapons, and we're ready to go. We've got this huge pile. Come at me. And it's a simple conversation that can be said very calmly in a couple of words. And we're going to have an hour conversation about something that could be 3 sentences, right? That's a brain thing. And there are skills and strategies that you can use for this. There are these people that are great with communication have very standardized ways of communicating things that you just plug in your issue. It works really well. It's fabulous to try. However, you need your nervous system to get in position to do that. If you're in survival mode, you're not going to do that well. You'll do it for a second, and then back up the defenses will go, back up the triggering, the flooding, the emotional distress will go, and you won't make any progress. So, but that's great. This is why people that are having marriage therapy issues and challenge, like things doing that, if your nervous system isn't ready to go and can't support what you're learning, then it's not going to be very beneficial. So this, for people with complex PTSD, is really something I want to make standard before you go into your marriage therapy. I want you to be able to get your nervous system on board. I want to get safety deep in your nervous system. I want you to get mastery and control of and influence, more influence than control, of your responses and your reactions, and be able to properly support yourself to be in the mind, body, nervous system state to have safe communication. And there's so much work we need to do individually and then together as a couple to do that. Now we're ready to rock and roll, and we will smash marriage therapy and integrate all these new ways of being and really build a wonderful foundation for communication, right? And that's the good stuff. That's really, really where we want to be. And there's a step here. Oftentimes people with complex PTSD fail marriage therapy, fail marriages, fail all these things because they actually didn't have the foundation. Marriage therapy is wonderful if you don't have if you've resolved your PTSD or your complex childhood issues, or you just didn't have them in the first place. And it makes perfect sense. It's wonderful. It's great training, but you have to be at ground level to do it. If you've got complex PTSD, there's foundational stuff that's not in place for you to have success. And so many people with complex PTSD, histories of generational trauma that haven't been resolved, they're really trying so hard and continuing to fail, and the system's continuing to fail them, and they feel like it's them. It's not you. It's actually, there's a couple more steps for you that you need to go through before you're ready for relationship counseling, communication learning, being able to apply the things you're reading in the books. There's foundational brain work that needs to go on first, that people in health with healthy childhoods, or mostly healthy childhoods, already have the neurological foundation for. And so you're trying to do something that requires enough safety built into the system, and safety, there enough safe environment for your brain to create a bunch of awesome things on your foundation. And that stuff hasn't been built. This is not a thing that's being addressed commonly. So please hear me. Set yourself up for success by doing this foundational brain work first. So okay, and I do video after video after video on this, and so please see me on YouTube. This is what is in my program, Inner World Transformation. That's my 8-week program for resolving these issues and creating healing and overcoming complex PTSD. And the process I walk all my coaching clients through and all my therapy clients through. And it's this foundational work. It's the foundation for all growth, and for the brain, to get your brain to do it for you, which is how it's supposed to be done. You're not supposed to be out here trying to willpower, overthink, get there first in your mind before your brain, your mind body system gets there, because who knows where the heck left field they'll take us. No, we need to be working together. We need to be coming together as a mind-body system to move forward. If you want to go forward, but your body is that way and your subconscious mind is that way, you're not going forward. And this is how sabotage happens. If you don't want to be sabotaged, get all parts of you together and go forward. And it doesn't have to be a long process. We spend decades failing this, but if we just do the root work here, rebuilding the foundational pieces, we'll have success in months instead of decades. And this is powerful and hope-giving and inspiring and renewing to our relationships. I've seen couples go from "I will hunt you down" and I'm having fantasies of not good things, to "in love and connected and building intimacy and being partners that are healing the intimacy programming." Okay, so which is important work. And so I have a video on that, on building intimacy and cleaning that stuff up. That's worth a watch, especially if this is your issue. You get to see what you get to do next once you get this piece involved. Okay, so let me look here through my notes. One of the things I wrote down here is that the problem with impaired communication is that it's such a time suck. There's so much in life involved with communication, and it is the root of disconnection. It's one of the roots of disconnection in relationships, in the workplace, in so many areas. Also, social anxieties in here as well. It's also one of the roots of loneliness and failed relationships. And so the correction of this is super important. I've recently been talking about processing emotions, and that's one of the foundational pieces of communication, is that we really want to be communicating with skill, not communicating with emotion. And you might be shocked and amazed by that if you grew up in a family that utilized their emotions and weaponized their emotions and communicated with their emotions. For me to say you actually communicate with skills might be a huge leap, but that's really where we want to get. Your emotions are a valuable part of this, but most of us, our brains can't do more with emotions than let the emotions move and then use the emotion for fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn, survival mode. But really, the emotions have a higher way of helping us, and they're vital to our wellness. But they need to be going through our whole brain, our processing, evaluating. Our brain converts negative emotion and positive emotion into health and wellness. We need that conversion to take place. That's a whole brain process. We need the whole brain involved. And so if we're in survival mode, we're not, that part of the brain has been, that process is shut down. And so we need that, we need the emotions doing more things for us than just emotioning. We need the brain to really work with those. And so in our communication, if we're just using emotion in our communication, that's a sign that our brain is not completing the process with emotions. Okay. I have lots of videos about this, about what the brain does with anger and the conversion process that takes place and how important that is for us. Grief, same thing. I have lots of videos on this. Watch them if you want more, if you need me to inspire you to what all of these negative emotions are supposed to be doing. If your brain could work on them, what they would do would be awesome. But that's really what we want to do. And we want to really change. It's really important. Communication is the opportunity for connection, synergy, intimacy. It is the gateway to all the awesome. However, if we don't have the skills for it, it will be used against us traumatically. We will traumatize each other. Then we'll have to do cleanup. Then we'll have to work ourselves up to do it the next time. And it's just this snowball of awful. Where if we've got the skill set running and active, and we've got the nervous system to sustain it, then all of a sudden we've got intimacy, connection, synergy, and just higher function, right? We're working together as a team. We're being safe with one another. We're drawing each other together. It's like it's attractive, and we want that in our relationships. We want our partner. They have a problem. They actually just come to us, right? Instead of this is going to be a big blow up, or oh my gosh, we'll go round and round again. Okay, so so we want to shift that. I want to talk about some brain malfunctions, and then we'll wrap up here. So this is stuff that you're going to see that this is a sign you need to support your survival system to open up processing. And this is some of the work I really walk people through doing their exercises for this. And one is disorganized thoughts. If your thoughts are looping, if they're scattered, if you've got thoughts from this timeline and this timeline, it was like this with that person, it was like, so it must be here. If it's just disorganized, your brain is not processing. Brains are naturally organizing. Executive functioning, right? Your executive functioning has been turned off. That's what happens in survival mode, is that the brain turns off the executive functioning parts of the brain, so you don't get to use them. That's why we're seeing disorganization. And that's a sign, hey, let's get that process. This is a time where you want to use one of the interventions and help your survival system shift over while the disorganization is running. Because we're like, oh, disorganization, hey, you need to go to the top of the brain. Let me hold the door for you. Let me get the gatekeep open. And then it just naturally goes through. This is the part we need to help our brain with, that survival system shift, opening that door. One of the things you're going to see, this also with disorganized thoughts, is we have a heavy need for venting. And you'll also notice you're getting nowhere in communication, just getting nowhere in the conversation. That's tough, and that's a brain thing. And if you're the one creating that dysfunction, you use an intervention. Switch yourself right out of that. And it's so awesome for your partner to be like, okay, here we go. Let's keep going. And your partner, your communication partner, usually wants to. And our brains malfunction. This is a thing. Regular people, untraumatized brains malfunction. Like there's work their brain can't do and needs support doing. That's how brains are wired. It's not a bad thing, but because we didn't get that early in childhood, our brain needs more support now because it's just deficient in safety, signaling, and building, and we can help it now. If you're communicating and you're seeing cognitive distortions, a lot of people are feeling cognitive distortions. They're like, something's wrong here. I don't know what it is. Usually that's a cognitive distortion. Whoa, why are we out here in left field? How did this conversation take a left, right? This is usually a cognitive distortion is here. This is an early sign of processing. This just means that you need to support your brain to finish processing. It's actually not a communication time. It's actually a processing time. And we need to separate some of these activities, processing and communication. When I'm having sessions with couples, we pause and process. And then we will resume communication when the whole brain has turned back on and executive functioning is here, which is where the skill sets are. They're in the part of the brain, the executive functioning. If that part of the brain's not running, you don't get your skills. Right? So we want that. We want healthy brain function the whole time through. And if the brain dips, we're going to support and get it back up and running. and we're going to restore conversation. If we can get through a full conversation, our brain learns, huh, that was interesting. Never saw that coming. And then the second time, oh, that was interesting. We did that before. The third time, oh, I like this. I think we should do this more. I bet I could make this. And now it's starting to build a subconscious program for this, and you're noticing your communication's getting better and better, because this processing thing I'm talking about, opening and getting running again, is also the same process for growth, maturation, and mastery. So we're growing in our communication skills, we're mastering our communication skills, and we're maturing in our communication skills. Some of our communication skills are very immature, and so we've got to get that moving. The brain does that for you. You can't say, oh, just grow up. Yeah, you should grow up already. No, is your brain going through the process of helping your stuff mature? If it's not, it's not your fault. That's a brain function thing. Let's help it do what it needs to do. Okay, so cognitive distortions are going to be overgeneralizations. You always, you never, this is how it is, and it's overgeneralizations. This is part of poor communication. This is when you're eating food that you put in the oven and you only did it halfway and it's still half baked. This is not good stuff. This can traumatize us, right? We can get killed, poisoned, all the things by this uncooked food, and vomiting for days and be traumatized. And then we're like, I don't want that food anymore. No, it's not food. It's uncooked. It's not fully cooked. It's safe to eat. Just you got to cook it all the way. Same thing in communication. We can't just go with half-cooked brain function. We've got to get the brain moving all the way through. And so if you see these signs, we need to take a pause and process. Emotional reasoning. Well, oh gosh, it feels like I'm being attacked. So I'm being attacked. Why are you attacking me? Wait, hold up. If we feel like we're being attacked, we could ask some questions, right? There's a lot more things we're going to do in a space when we feel attacked. We're going to reality check a little bit. We're going to see where we're at in the process, and we're going to do some brain work to do that. Also in communication, something that happens is flooding. A lot of emotional distress and subconscious material just shows up in the moment, and it feels like you are being flooded with a ton of feeling, a ton of sensations. It's overloading. As therapists, we really try to avoid this state, but it happens. And so it happens in communication a lot. And what we'll see shutdown, we'll see emotional dysregulation, maybe crying, maybe screaming, maybe self-harming. This is flooding is difficult. And we can build skills for that. But also this is a sign. This is when brains say, well, I don't know what belongs here. Maybe all of this unresolved material does, because it hasn't gone through its process of understanding and organizing the unprocessed material. That's why this is one of the reasons why I don't start communication skills right away. I do trauma processing and past pain and the backlog of work that the brain hasn't been able to do yet, because that needs to be sorted, made sense of, and really wired into the network in a healthy way. That way the brain doesn't just dump it everywhere. I don't know, maybe this stuff goes there. It already knows it doesn't go there. We want to walk the brain through its process of knowing what belongs here in this conversation or not before we get to this conversation. Because once you're in the conversation, you can't go through 100 years and generational trauma and all the things that are in this, right? And so we want to do that before we get here. This is some of the stuff people with complex PTSD are bringing into conversations that could be very difficult for them, and very difficult for them to stay present in the conversation and the challenge. And so we want to work through that before we get here. That's what I'm talking about we don't just want to go into marital therapy. Your brain actually hasn't done some of the work it needed to do to get there. To be in that and really rock out that stuff. If your brain's flooding everything onto it because it doesn't know if it belongs here or not, which is what PTSD is about, unprocessed stuff the brain hasn't gone through and processed yet, doesn't understand it, and hasn't wired it properly to create health and wellness for us, which brains do with traumas. It actually will wire it to help us create health and wellness. If your trauma is still creating problems for you and harm and reducing function, then this process your brain hasn't been able to work that trauma through its process yet. But when we see flooding, we'll see overloading, we'll see shutting down, and we'll see increased reactivity. We'll see minds going blank, and we'll actually see people with, I don't know what to say. and they'll be very quiet, almost mute, sometimes mute. And that's a processing thing. If we're in survival mode, something that's coming up that hasn't been processed yet, has never gone through the part of the brain that gives words to it. And so we want people to be able to explain how they feel, but their feelings have never made it through the process. There are no words for it, and so there's blankness and silence, and I don't know what to say. Right? We need to get that resolved before we go into marriage counseling, couples counseling, communication skill building. You need to be able to have words and that you can use for your experiences and what's going on within you, so that you can communicate yourself in the situation, not just communicate all the things. We want you to be vulnerable and bring yourself into the conversation. If your brain hasn't ever been able to wire in and figure out where the self is or give words to the self, what are we doing? Okay. And also, what we'll see when flooding happens is long processing times. People will need to take breaks from the conversation, or they'll get out of it and avoid it, and they will be thinking about it for days. They don't even know they're thinking about it sometimes, but they can't return back to the conversation because it's just not processing. And so they don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. This is not them trying to avoid. This is actually a brain malfunction. Their brain cannot go through the process of creating the words that they need. And the words they need are in there. Just the part of the brain that would do that is not showing up. And that's it. That's really what I want to say today. I want to go off on this more. I will be talking about this more. And yeah, I hope you got a lot from this video, and I'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye.